2 rounds to go in the A-League and drop points everywhere you look. Not a sprint, more like a limp perhaps over the finish line. The big winners from the week were Melbourne City in a move that surprised absolutely no one. They've come good exactly when they needed to almost secure a continuance of their finals streak. The Jets and Auckland even out with draws apiece to keep the title race as it was, but a spot in next season's Champions League elite is locked up for Mark Milligan's men. Here come the Burgers. Sydney get the spoils in the derby on Saturday night. We've got a special guest to take you inside the soul of a Wanderers supporter at the end of another dour year. Macarthur, Wellington and Central Coast all but play themselves out of finals contention. We've got more players and referees getting smacked in the head, and Al Hassan Toure aura farming in front of the RBB on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachie Avil. Joining me tonight is Jacob Stevens at the end of a very entertaining weekend of A-League football. Jacob, hello.
Yeah, basically every game delivered, right? I mean, there weren't any that kind of were snooze fest, which come this point of the season is obviously what you want. You want exciting football, you want lots at stake, and I think, basically every fan will, have looked at those games and gone, yeah, it was a good week of football. Some, maybe less so than others, Joe. I mean, that was the individual teams aside. As a whole, I thought the weekend of football was extremely entertaining to watch. But yeah, there were some performances that maybe were not as good as others.
As there always is. Our special guest today is, of course, Joe Kay. Joe, we mentioned it as you popped onto the video call. You're a brave man for showing up in the Wanderers shirt tonight, but I respect it. You got to stick with your team, live by the sword, die by the sword. How are you feeling after Saturday night?
Oh, I'm not feeling great, boys. Bit lovely to be invited on here after a win, but these are the things we go through as a fan, unfortunately. But yeah, got to rep the boys no matter what.
Absolutely. Well, of course, when we get this close to the end of the A-League season, our eyes are fixed firmly on the ladder and all the changes and permutations that take place. So as of now, Newcastle have top 2 secured, so their point against Adelaide wasn't quite enough to get the Premier's plate or even close to, but they have locked up that top 2, which of course means a semi-final. So they skipped the elimination leg and will go into the 2-leggers to get a spot in the grand final. And of course, the spot in the ACL Elite is locked up. Auckland, of course, being the Kiwi team. There's no other Aussie team that can catch them. Joe, I know you probably more than most, to be fair, are a massive fan of just everything Australian football, right? I know you have connections with, of course, the Wanderers, but at NPL level as well. What's your take on the Burgers situation that got found out last week? It seems like now that the Jets have wrapped up that spot, that Heidelberg, an NPL team from Victoria, look like they could be competing in Asia.
I absolutely love it. I mean, this is... We often look at the Australia Cup, at least from an A-League lens, as a bit of a pre-season tournament. But this right here is a lesson to every single A-League club that you have to take the Australia Cup seriously. Heidelberg beat 3 A-League teams. They haven't just walked into this. They have fully deserved what they have got on their doorstep. Yes, they've had a bit of luck here with the Jets going on to have a fantastic season in the A-League. But I'm a massive fan of it. They've been rewarded for what was an incredibly long and arduous season last year with the championship on top of the Australia Cup. So the fact that now they're reaping the rewards, I think it's a brilliant thing for Australian football. I know, Lachie, you probably more than anyone will have things to say on the coefficient. But at the same time, I think there is importance in acknowledging the fact that these clubs maybe aren't as far apart as they have been in the past, NPL to A-League. And a platform like this could really help someone like Heidelberg, who isn't a foundation club in the Australian Championship, but the money they would get from entering this competition and the support from Football Australia could not only help them become a foundation club in future, but then also even have their eyes set on loftier heights.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to surprise you here. I'm actually not as dour on the kind of coefficient angle as some people are, I know, going around. I've seen Heidelberg firsthand. I watched their last 3 games in the Australia Cup. I've seen them in the NPL. They are a good side. I think they're more than a chance of getting out of any potential group they might find themselves in the ACL too. Much beyond that is up to question, but we saw, Macarthur drop out in the first elimination round this season, so anything is possible. But of course, in the A-League this weekend, the other kind of results out of this, Jacob, no one else apart from the Jets and Auckland, has secured finals. Sydney and Adelaide, 6 points and 15 goal difference or so with 2 rounds to play. You feel pretty comfortable, but the mathematicians will tell you there's a little door open there. Victory and City, slightly less comfort than that. But the Glory and the Roar joined the Wanderers as mathematically eliminated sides. So that's how it's all shook out. It feels like, especially with Melbourne City's win, that we've kind of found our top 6 here.
Definitely feels that way. And I mean, sure, it's a 6-point gap and a massive goal difference. But in my mind, all that is you just have to be on the wrong end of 2, kind of chaos classic A-League games, right? And all of a sudden, your finals hopes are gone. So I don't know, like the door is very much still open. And given how some of these top 6 sides have played, and we were speaking about it pre-recording, Lachie, in recent weeks, I mean, just about anything's possible, because it feels like at this point in time, none of those sides want to win a game of football. It's they're actively looking to draw, it feels like, and it's what we've seen over the last few weeks from them. So it's just, it's not helped anybody out, right? The Jets are still in the same position that they've been in for the last few weeks, where they have to get a win. Auckland haven't been able to make up the ground despite the Jets dropping points. Adelaide and Victory have had draws again and been jumped by Sydney. Like, it's all these teams are just kind of, it feels like none of them are really taking it by the bit and pushing on and getting that big result to secure their season. And so it is still all up in the air mathematically with a couple of games to go, which it just makes it a lot more fun. These fixtures are going to have a lot more to them. We always come to this point of the season and it feels like there are fixtures where we go, who cares? They're not playing for anything, season's done. But this season it does feel a little bit different because the gaps are so tight, even within the 6, whether you're securing a home final or not and things like that. So it's coming to a head now, and I think the fact that these teams keep getting in their own way is just going to make it even more entertaining as it kind of winds down, and a lot of them are playing each other in these final 2 rounds as well. So it's the permutations are huge because there's going to be a lot of 6-pointers there.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the form guide, like you look at the teams that have won consecutive matches in the last month and all of them come in that mid-pack. And because all of them come in the mid-pack, like you look at a Wellington Phoenix that won 3 games in a row, you look at that a month ago and you think you're probably sitting pretty good. But unfortunately, 1 loss is all it's taken. And now they find themselves 5 points out with 2 games to play. So very tough on them. Let's go to the Sydney Derby on Saturday night, Joe. It was obviously not a great night for the Wanderers. It felt like Sydney could have put this game to bed a lot earlier in the game. I make it 3 pretty good chances for Stamatolopoulos in the first half. Yes, 1 was offside, and 1 for Al Hassan Toure before his aforementioned aura farming, getting the opening goal. But the Wanderers did have some of the momentum in the second half. You got the Kraev handball goal that was disallowed and a few other good chances, and then just a little bit of quality. Thiago Quintal's ball through to Stammer was pretty clean to seal it for him. How did you view the game?
Look, it was, in terms of taking my Wanderers hat off here, it was actually a pretty good derby. The crowd probably doesn't reflect that, but in terms of the on-field football, I thought it was a pretty heated clash, some good moments in there. And like you said, big chances for both teams rather than like a 0-0, just see what we can get out of this. But yeah, look, honestly, we were definitely the weaker team in the game throughout the full 90. I'm quite an optimist with my the Wanderers, as a lot of people would know. But this was probably the first derby where I had 0 expectations going into it. And I remember after the last derby, I sent a little voice note, and my whole thing was that I was happy that I could feel something. And this game, it just didn't feel anything. And I think it's just because the club has just kept going down this path. And I think I share the sentiment of so many Wanderers fans that it's just gotten to a point where it doesn't hurt as much as it should. And I mean, it's good, it's nice, but like, I want to feel things for this club, but they're just drifting so far away from where we want to be and where we have been, and it hurts.
So I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. And this is a point I was planning to bring up with you because I wanted your take on it. But I feel the way the league's gone, this is a wider conversation as well, but you look at things like the Ryan Teague transfer, right, going to Melbourne City and coming straight from Victory. Arzani, a little bit less so. He came out of the academy at City, right? But the whole thing with Ufuk Talay, and we'll get into the weeds of that with you, but it feels like clubs can get away with that stuff Not because there isn't going to be outcry, because there is a little bit from, the passionate parts of the supporter base, but more than most, it's just apathy. It's just like, why I give up. I feel like is the sentiment of a lot of people. Like, why are we constantly putting so much time and energy and money in a lot of cases into this club if this is how they're going to treat these kinds of deals? So when you mention, the crowd, 16,000, that's I think the third worst Sydney Derby crowd outside of COVID restrictions, right? I think that represents a lot, Jacob, of what Joe's talking about in that fan base of just like, I should be angry about this. I should be upset, but you've just gone one too far. I've lost a lot of that passion.
Yeah, and it's something that Vince Regari wrote about as well in the Sydney Morning Herald this morning. I think it was Sunday morning as of recording, where he's saying it just feels like the Sydney Derby has lost a little bit of the spark that it's had. And a lot of that is to do with the fact that, at least this season, the Wanderers have kind of, become this source of complete apathy, like you said, Lachie, from their fan base and kind of from a lot of neutral followers of the league as well. The Wanderers still have, they hold a weight of expectation in a way of they should be a stronger team than they have been recently. They should be up in, the top 4 realistically, every season. And that's not just the expectations that kind of the club has perpetuated throughout their history, but that then infects, like I said, the fan base, both within the Wanderers and outside of that, as an expectation of the Wanderers to be one of the highest performing clubs in the league. And that's not been the case. And they've lost their identity along the way. They've lost their fan base. And this fixture itself then has lost a little bit of the spark that it's got. And it's just, it's weird to see, because it feels like the bones are there and everyone can see it. And we saw how strong, obviously, the Wanderers were when they first joined the league and just kind of absolutely dominated the everything on and off the pitch, right? I mean, they had a great squad and, came narrowly close to winning it all a couple of times. Obviously won the Champions League. Off the field, they kind of really set the tone through the mid-2010s there in terms of that active support culture as well. And now it's all kind of gone away, and it's almost like the club is a shell of itself. And obviously I'm looking at it from the outside in, but there's still a little voice in the back of my head every time that I see the Wanderers on the fixture list. I go, oh, that's going to be a difficult game. But the reality of it is that over the last couple of seasons, that's not necessarily been the case. And I just find that so crazy that there's been this kind of slow, gradual, almost kind of deterioration of the club before our eyes. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm coming at this from an outsider, so I can't say for sure, obviously, what any of the issues are. I don't know if anybody can, but it's really just disappointing to see, because, the Sydney Derby, you're getting 60,000 out there, 10 years ago, and now you're getting 16,000. It's just when one club has a fall off that can impact things that much, and it shows how important they are to the footballing ecosystem in Australia, number one. If they can have that kind of a sway where you can change crowds, 5-6 times over when they're performing well, that says something. But it's just, it's really disappointing to see. And I don't know, like, where do they move to next, right? Obviously, they've signed Tale. They've got the new director of football in as well, which we discussed last week, Lachie. But it feels like nothing's really changed. Like, it feels like, is this just going to be more of the same? I don't know.
So, Joe, in no small part thanks to my misreading of the fixture list, I booked you in for this podcast a couple of weeks ago, so you've had some time to prepare. And you let me know earlier today that you've been using that time well, and you've prepared a little something for us. Now, my spider senses are going off here. This feels kind of like the right moment. What have you got for us?
So, now, a lot of what we've talked about here is about the issues with the Wanderers. And I think the most obvious issue with the club is that over the years, at least the last decade, there's been no opportunity for local young talent coming through. And as a result, these young talents have had to go seek opportunities at other clubs. The Sydney Derby featured 3 boys for Sydney FC: Akola Kon, Watura Kamijo, and Reece Yuli. All spent substantial time within the Wanderers Academy, but never played for the first team. But it goes further, boys, because as you see right here, I have prepared in a very messy fashion a Western Sydney Wanderers Academy 11, currently playing in the A-League. And I would like you both to tell me what you think the score would be between this team and the Wanderers if they were to meet. Okay. In goal, from Melbourne Victory, we have Jack Wachowski. Then, defensive line, it's going to be very familiar, probably not the most solid defensive line, but left back, Daniel Wilmarine. Centre backs, we've got Mark Natter and Costa Grozos, as well as Thomas Aquilina on the right back. So literally the entire league-leading defence have all spent... These players in particular, a lot of their time was developed at the Wanderers, with a few getting first-team opportunities, but in particular Wilmarine and Natter, but just... I would like to see a bit of more long-term faith in these boys as well. A lot of them get thrown in the deep end, and the second there's an ounce of doubt in their abilities, we just palm them off to other clubs, and there's no real investment in these local boys. Then moving into the midfield, I've already mentioned them already. We've got Yuli and Camizio from Sydney FC. At the 10, you got DePizio, you got Badalado, who's obviously been out injured. And then up top, we have got Marcus Eunice, my favourite player to watch in the A-League right now. I'm sure we'll touch on him later. Nathaniel Blair at the Mariners, who was the leading scorer in the NPL New South Wales just a couple of years ago. And then on the right, we've also got Ali Orgler, who I think was told by someone at the club to stop playing football and go to uni. That's what he was told when he left the Wanderers. So that is an 11.
Footballers being told to stop playing football in Australia at the moment.
Yeah.
It came out with the Redmayne stuff, didn't it? So
yeah. Anyway, boys, there's plenty more, and there's been plenty more over the years. I don't think we could name a single local boy who's came through the Wanderers and the club has maximised what he has done. The only one would be Keanu Bacchus, but even then he left the club on a free transfer to then go and mark Lionel Messi in the round of 16 a couple of months later, and he left on a free. So it's just that's one of the many issues throughout the club, and we touched on it earlier about how it's kind of hard to fathom in this position. But it's that, then it's also a stack of other reasons on top of it that just year after year after year, rebuild after rebuild, it's just left us where we are now, bottom of the table, staring down our first ever wooden spoon.
And I think what's interesting, to answer part of your question in there, if you line up the players that played on Saturday night for the Wanderers with that squad you just named, the funny thing is, I'd still back the players in the Wanderers team in complete isolation, right? You pick them out, just say from whatever moment of their careers, no coaching influence, no tactical influence, whatever. I think man for man, the team that lines up on Saturday night is a better team. But for whatever reason, the team that I look at the start of the season and literally tip to win the premiership, finish first, they're going to finish 12th now, likely. There's something in there. Joe, I've seen your thoughts on this in social media, but I'd love for you to tell everyone as well. The idea of that technical role, the director of football, technical director, whatever you want to call it, it's something that Gary Van Egmond, as the interim manager, has been shouting out, calling for in one of his post-match interviews. And the fact that they make that appointment is obviously a good thing, but it comes 2 weeks after the appointment of a new head coach. How does that make sense, you know?
Yeah, it's look, that's probably my only problem with the appointment. This is something that we have needed for so long, to get a director of football in, someone who can actually build a blueprint for what the Wanderers want to be. It's interesting because it kind of, in my mind, I might be tricking myself into believing this, but he actually worked with Tale at Wellington in the past. So I'm trying to see if maybe there was something going on there as well. And there might have been already in the plans, just maybe not the contract signed, essentially. I would hope that's the case. Because, it doesn't make sense to hire a coach, then a football director. But if perhaps there was discussions beforehand, probably would have been smart for the club to announce it in a different order, though. Just going to put that out there. But it is what it is. And I think, look, it's one of those things where I think now we're just going to have to just hope for the best here, but then also make sure we, as fans, hold the club accountable. And I did want to just give a quick mention to any Wanderers fans who are listening. There's a fan forum at Marconi on the 20th of April where you can go in and speak with Lederer and the CEO, Scott Hudson. I'll be down there myself. There's a few things I want to ask and get some answers to that I think, the main thing's accountability here. We can't have this as a club finishing bottom.
All right. Good win for Sydney on the other side of it. That puts them up into third in the competition. Still 4 points away from a top 2 place from Auckland, but right in the mix. And as I say, all but secured a finals position, really. 6 points and 17 goals, I think it would be, to MacArthur. So pretty much secure. They're locked into finals. We talked about the Jets locking up their ACL elite spot. They played Adelaide. Jacob, the two best attacking teams in the competition could only manage a 1-1 draw. It wasn't through a lack of trying, to be fair.
Yeah.
The referees got in the way of a few. There were many controversial moments in this game. Off the back of the kind of concussion discussion that we had last week, we saw young Will Dobson as well get hit. Take a little bit of time before he's substituted off. My absolute favourite moment is the Jets doing the old, pretend to not agree on who's taking the free kick and the little run in behind from Clayton Taylor and the dink over the top. Unfortunately, the referee's whistle hadn't gone. I think that's pretty cut and dry, but it was quite inventive.
Yeah, and honestly, I would have been incredibly aggrieved had it been, the other way around. So, I can kind of understand the frustration of the Jets because that was a really well-worked routine. And, obviously it was a perfectly weighted pass as well to hit him in stride and, get it over the wall without it just sailing to the keeper. So I was watching it and I was like, he's just making a run here, and then you just see the dinked ball over the top, and I was like, oh no. Fortunately, of course, the referee hadn't blown his whistle, so for Adelaide fans, a bit of a reprieve there. But yeah, that was one of I think 3 goals that were chalked off. Adelaide had 2 of their own, Anselmo with a bicycle kick that, not the only bicycle kick that almost resulted in a goal this round, which is crazy, but he's been tremendous for Adelaide since actually being fit and playing, and had a massive impact in this one. Got the assist for Ryan White's goal. Almost had another assist as well when the ball was judged to have gone over the line. It's a tough one. I'm not sure if the camera angles that are available are sufficient to say that there was clear evidence that ball had crossed the line. I think the thing that's tricking people is the ball's not on the ground in those shots that you're seeing.
It's so high.
The ball is in the air. It's like knee height. So that immediately you're going to see grass between the ball and the line because it's above the line. So we don't have that direct kind of parallel footage. It's incredibly difficult to make that call. So that's a tough one, but it's also swings and roundabouts of this kind of system, right, where it's not 100% perfect, and these kind of calls are going to be made one way or the other. And I don't know what you guys think of that one. I know that Adelaide United are still a bit sore about it. They've been posting today about things that we can't believe are over in 2026. And they're listing a bunch of different stuff, and then one of them is a picture of the ball on the line, and I don't know. It's a
That's
tight
good
one.
banter.
It is, but it's a tight one, and Andrioli's been quite vocal about VAR all season long. To be fair to him, sure, it's benefited Adelaide a couple of times. The victory game at home, right, is the most prime example of that. But he's been very staunchly anti-VAR in a way. He just thinks it's ruining the game of football. And we saw some of those comments again post game from him. Naturally, of course, having kind of taken the win away from the Reds. But I don't know. I think those ones are just. It's part and parcel of the system. Sometimes that's the call you're going to get, sometimes you're not, and it just didn't go in Adelaide's favour this time. I don't know. I like it's not overly egregious, but it's also I don't 100% agree with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think the ball was all the way over the line.
Yeah.
I don't know. As you say, you kind of have to do the geometry in your head, right? Like trying to predict how far up it is over the ground and whether the whole ball goes over. The thing that stands out to me, Joe, is you look at the replay and Mark Natter and Daniel Wilmering are the 2 defenders closing Anselmo down. There is no reaction and there is no appeal. Even after the goal goes in, Wilmering gives like a faint look over his shoulder to the linesman, but nothing more than that. I think you read the player's reaction. Obviously, referees, that can't be your only piece of information that you take in. But for me, they're selling the decision.
Oh yeah, I think you can learn a lot about players from players' body language in some of these instances, and yeah, I think that was a clear one. It's like when the handball goes up and they immediately like tuck their arms back by their sides. Sometimes you just got to look at them and just you can work it out for yourself off that.
That's what Hellas would say, right? You don't put your hands up. You just keep them down and you play on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to let it go. Good stuff. And I think, look, on the Jets, from a little bit of a longer term perspective, obviously they went on that remarkable run, Jacob, and they've had a few drop results since then. And our criticism of them earlier in the season, right, before they went on that big run, they had the win in the Australia Cup. They were playing some good football. The goals they're scoring were really nice and entertaining. But where they were losing points was giving the ball away in really, really dangerous areas. And I don't think we've seen that a lot since about round 7 or 8 when they started that run. But I did see it here against Adelaide. There were just a few moments where they gave up really, really valuable attacking opportunities to Adelaide and in those dangerous areas. And it was just from a lack of care moving the ball. And maybe, you could look at it as a negative in terms of, you've regressed in your tactics and you're moving backwards, but maybe it's just almost perfect timing in a way to get that little bit of a reminder. The fix, the game plan. Maybe that's a very optimistic way of looking at it, but they've been through this before is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's also potentially a little bit of the pressure catching up to them, right? Like it feels like, as I've said, they've kind of been stumbling along for a little bit now. They've had their moments to seize the title and they've not taken them. And then they come up against, a pretty solid Adelaide side, and that's always going to be a tough fixture. I can't remember the exact record that the commentators were talking about, but I don't think Adelaide have lost away to Newcastle in a long time. They've got a very strong record away in Newcastle, so it's I think it's just a combination of factors there and a little bit of just regression to where they in that early phases of build up where they had some problems earlier this season. I think the thing that kind of has annoyed Jets fans is that didn't then result in that same risk taking in the final third, where it just felt very stagnant and static, playing forwards, and Adelaide were giving the Jets a lot of space, and nobody was really tempted to shoot until Eli Adams came on, of course, takes a shot, and it causes the rebound that results in the goals. I think the Jets fans are a little bit nervous about that, because is it a case of just the yips, right, where it's like, it's just one bad game, they know how to get over this kind of thing, or is it a case of it's that kind of not underdog mentality, but kind of almost lack of self-belief in a way starting to seep in of, are we cut out for this now? Like, there's a lot still at play every week when we go out, and we've kind of dropped points consistently now for a little while. We've not gotten the job done. Maybe we need to try something different, and then they start taking more risks again in those early phases, and that's when those mistakes come back. I don't know. I think they'll be fine. They're a very well-coached team. They stayed in this one. They could barely get into the second half for the most part, but some good subs. All of a sudden they get that impact. They're back in it for the final 15, 20 minutes. So I think the mentality is still there. This is a strong side. They're pretty clear and confident that they can win something more this season. Of course, they've already got the Australia Cup, in their pocket, essentially. It's, what can they add to it now? I think it's pretty clear. They think they can still add more to it. It's just, let's make sure these mistakes don't become a consistent thing again. And maybe it is a good thing to get out of the way before finals, but also it could be bad on the other hand of, is this now going to seep into their finals campaign, right? Where all of a sudden those mistakes come back in these big games and it doesn't bode well for those knockout fixtures. I don't know. Like I say, I think they're well coached enough that this shouldn't be a problem for them, but there's, you can understand why Jets fans may be a little bit nervous after the performance that they did have.
All right, so drop points for the Jets, but in the end, no ground lost on their competitors Auckland in the race for the Premier's Plate. They drew 2-2 with Melbourne Victory on Saturday afternoon. And Joe, honestly, for me, for Auckland, at least in the context of this race with Newcastle, I'm getting really worried about the injuries that they're starting to build up. Obviously, we saw Guillaume Mai. He had his 8 days for his concussion protocol, so all being well, he'll be back. But the likes of Michael Vowd, obviously Jake Brimmer, Francis De Vries, and now Nando Pijneke as well, with what looked like a pretty nasty shoulder injury. that's just stacking up at the wrong time. I know Auckland have only existed for 2 years, but throughout their entire existence, their defensive solidity has been the hallmark of who they are, really. That kind of back four last year was incredible, and obviously throw Alex Paulson in net, they were barely conceding a goal. But a lot of those injuries have started to open up gaps, I think, and I think we saw that with Visilic as well in his error to give away the goal finisher and Valupale. When you're going into finals, like over the course of the season, it's one thing, but finals is do or die. You got to win games of football at that moment. That is really coming at the wrong time for Steve Corica.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we kind of mentioned it there, but they've had a pretty smooth run as an A-League club so far. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they react to this kind of hurl that's in front of them. They've also got Jimmy Hilton in goal now as well, who knows a thing or two about penalty shootouts if they're required in the final series. But yeah, look, it's going to be tough for them. Definitely, especially some of these teams in finals are really starting to click into gear, especially City as well. Were pretty on point earlier today. So there's definitely going to be some more hurdles to come their way in the final series.
So before we move on to the victory in this part of the game, we've got, when we look at, the Jets and Auckland in these final two rounds, they both play the Central Coast Mariners, which is an interesting part of this run home. I think when they got close, what was it, like 5 rounds to go, they both had the exact same fixture list, which was quite funny. But the difference here in the last 2 rounds, Auckland play Sydney FC and Newcastle play Melbourne Victory. So it feels in the balance, and Jacob, I know you had a look at these fixtures before we recorded, and you're just looking like Auckland versus Sydney, and then Newcastle in their current form have to travel away to Victory next week. I don't know. Who are you favouring? There is a 3-point lead to Newcastle.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, right? Because I don't know why I feel like Auckland is still very much a chance with those fixtures. I just feel like Jets potentially could struggle more against Victory than Auckland would against Sydney, and that's kind of the killer for me, right? Because if the Jets only manage 3 points over those 2 fixtures and Auckland get all 6, they go top, right? They've got better goal difference as it is right now. So I think it's going to come down to how do the Jets show up in Melbourne next weekend. If they can snatch a point, I feel like they are in a lot better position than they are now in a way. But I think if they lose, it's going to be a struggle, because then all of a sudden you've got the Mariners who, they're kind of unlikely perhaps to make the 6 now from here, but it's the F3 derby, right? It's not the F3 derby when Auckland play the Mariners, right? It doesn't have that extra level to it that it does when it's the Jets. So,
and it could be an F3 derby to deny the Mariners, the Jets, the title.
The Jets the title in the final round. So it just, I don't know, I feel like the kind of sum of the parts, it's more difficult for the Jets. They're really relying on having that 3-point buffer right now. Like I said, I think this victory game next week for the Jets could make or break their season. Because I think if they don't get that, if they don't get even a point next weekend, that's going to be very, very difficult for them come final round to have to play the Mariners for the title. That's rough.
Who are you backing?
I'm backing the Jets. I think, that 3-point buffer is going to be nice to them. They've earned it. They've got it now. And I'm going to jump on board the Novocastrian bandwagon. Ride them home. Ride them home to the Premiership. I might have to go up there for that final F3 of the season. I think that will be a great day out. And so I'm going to get my love for A-League football back again, I reckon.
I love it. I'm just wondering, I'm looking at the final fixtures in that round before me. So the F3 derby is played on the Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock, and then Auckland play in Sydney on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Do we need to have a conversation about some of these fixtures, all of the final round fixtures being played at the same time? Because they're, especially in this season, we think maybe the top 6 will be wrapped up as a group, but a lot of the positions in there are going to go down to this final round of the season, Jacob. Yeah. Is that something we need in the A-League?
I feel like we've had this discussion a couple of times before, and it's a really difficult one, right? Because purely from a selfish point of view, I want to be able to watch these games, especially if there's all that on the line. I want to be able to watch them all and not have to, either split screen or choose one or the other. But there's also the logistics of it all. Like, just does it make sense to have them all running at the same time? Like, do we realistically have the ability to do that? Like, I don't know what like the refereeing situation looks like and things like that, and VAR and all that fun stuff. So I don't know if logistically it's even possible, but it would be fun, right? It would add that kind of, you know, footballing heritage to it almost, in a way, right? Where it's we've kind of, watching European football and watching big tournaments around the world, become a little bit accustomed to having that final round all played at the same time. And, you know, obviously there's been good reasons historically for it. It was at one of the World Cups back in the 50s, 0-0 draw played out with nobody really playing football because they'd already secured their spots in the knockouts, so who cares, what are we doing this for, kind of stuff. But here, yeah, this is really the first season in a while where it feels like it's definitely going to come down to that final round. And it would be cool to have them played at the same time, and it might take a little bit of the spectacle away if it's wrapped up, you know, kind of on that Saturday afternoon in a way. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it would even work. And I don't know if it would be as enjoyable as we think it might be. You know, it could also just be incredibly anticlimactic and just be like, well, it would have been better if they were separate. So I don't know.
Maybe we just need one of those moments. We need, like, I don't know, a Western Sydney and a Perth Glory just kicking it round the back for 90 minutes so they can both play finals football or something.
Yeah, that's right. Need a reason for it to happen, and then you will get it, yeah.
And then we'll get the trigger, and then we'll get to consecutive games on the final day. I think out of this game for Victory, so they're currently sitting 5th on 36 points, 5 points and 18 goal difference clear. So they just need essentially one more point from their final two to wrap up a final spot. And I think the one thing, Jacob, I'll come back to you on interest from Victory in this game, the absence of Juan Mata. Now, we have good news on him. He's likely to be back as soon as maybe the Wanderers game in the final match of the regular season. But with the absence of him in the team, I think a lot of people's assumption would be that someone like a Denny Jonro would slot straight back into that 10 position, which he played so well in the first few rounds of the year. But I think what we've learnt with that not happening and Matt Grimaldi being the one to more step into that role is that the Jonro Valedon partnership at the base of midfield is something that Arthur Dillis values very highly. And I think that's actually very harsh on Louis Dorigo, because before he got injured, I thought he was one of Victory's best players. I remember watching him in the original rivalry, and he was giving it to Adelaide more than anyone else, which was probably the biggest surprise. But he's been a good player, but it seems like Denny Jonro being that more creative player at the base is what Dillis wants, and I think it paid off as well. Was it the first goal? He plays it into Valupale and gets the flick, and then releases Franco Lino on the left, who scores his first A-League men's goals. A little window into what life without Juan looks like.
Yeah, and I think with the whole genre thing as well, it's a case of he's actually playing really well there in that kind of double pivot in a way. Like, it seems silly to move him on from that just because of an injury. Like, you've got Grimaldi who can slot in really nicely in as the 10, and kind of has been a little bit hard done by Juan Mata just being a complete beast this season. And like, you know, he's just not had the chance to really get in much. So
sorry, Joe.
No, just more salt in the wounds.
But I thought it was pretty solid from Grimaldi in that role. And Jonro, yeah, he's still looking very good. And it's a case as well of, it's great to have a really creative, progressive passer deeper in the midfield too. It's something that not a lot of teams kind of focus on. They focus more in terms of the outer possession with those players. You know, how do they do their defensive duties? How do they help out the rest defense? How do they help out the shape of the team, etc., etc. But actually just having that outlet for your centre-backs to play to, who can then make that definitive pass through the lines, it takes a lot of the pressure off of your defense. So it's, you know, having that other option at the base of midfield is fantastic, and for Victory it's such a useful tool to have. And like you said, absolutely instrumental in that first goal. Without him, it probably wouldn't have come off. So it's, you know, it's a good problem to have almost, in a way, for Arthur Dillis. Of, you know, he can play as the 10 if we need him to, but he is so good right now playing that deeper role that it doesn't make too much sense to sacrifice what we get, the value we get from him there, to have him play a little bit higher up because Juan Mata's out for a couple of matches. Like, it's a good problem to have. It's, not a problem you want to have. You want to just say, well, yeah, Juan Mata's playing there. But, if you're gonna have this discussion over Grimaldi or Jean Rowe, at least you can play either or, and you've got those options. So, I think that, he's been solid for them this season. On the other hand, I think they did still feel the loss of Mata. I was saying, it feels like somebody's going to have to step up into that role a little bit, and I don't necessarily think it did. I think the standard as a whole across, that kind of those attacking-minded players certainly took a step up for Victory in this game. Nishan Veluple had a very good game as well, but it didn't feel like anybody really was like, right, there's no Juan Mata, I'm going to be the one that's going to take the game by the reins and kind of control it for us, which is maybe why they didn't get the desired result. But, I still think, all things considered, you lose your star player, everybody's going in thinking this is a chance for Auckland to get the points, and you come away with a draw and actually a pretty solid performance from everybody. It's not too bad for the Victory.
I mean, all things being equal, like when you go 2-1 up, Joe, you mentioned his name earlier, Jack Wachowski probably should have won the game, maybe a little bit of a soft goal to give away with that free kick. I think one of the interesting threads of this season for Victory has been him coming in for Jack Duncan. I rate Jack Duncan really highly. I thought he was very unlucky to kind of get supplanted by Mitch Langrak in the way he was. I don't think on form there was too much of a difference there. Obviously, Langrak gets injured. He plays the grand final and goes through that. Ends up just by happenstance playing enough games to get an extension in his contract as well through a games played clause. And then he comes in and gets replaced by Wachowski. And to be fair to him, there probably hasn't been as much conversation because of the level of his performances, which have been pretty good. But maybe this was just the one moment where that was realised a little bit more. Joe, I'll let you get your next Marcus Eunice mention in for the podcast. He scored a good goal for Melbourne City against the Wellington Phoenix. Almost had an insane one as well with the bicycle blocked off the line. I mean, we've been saying it since he came to the club in January, but he is having an extraordinary back end to this A-League season.
Absolutely. And it's, oh, God, this one hurts. This one hurts so much because he was doing this exact same stuff in the New South Wales NPL 2-3 years ago. And we got to remember, like, that's a pretty solid competition, the New South Wales NPL. Some big teams in there. He was scoring bicycle kicks, doing rainbow flicks over defenders. And I think we saw in this game in particular, he just has the ability to kind of make moments out of nothing with little touches into space when he's in the box in around players. There's one great moment, takes you on his chest down and immediately gets a shot across the box. He's just, I truly think he is a proper Socceroos bolter. I think he's been one of the best players in the league since he's arrived. Will he get a spot on the plane? I doubt it, just given the people in front of him. But I think he, originally, something that I did hear about him as well when he was set to return to the A-League, he was keen on coming back to the Wanderers. His parent club wasn't so keen on that happening. And I completely, look, let's, that's come from a source who won't be named, but that's something that has come out about him, at least to me, that I may as well share here, because just while we're talking about the Wanderers. But yeah, look, and I think the fact that he's ended up at City as well and put in the performances he has, whilst Daniel Arzani came back to the club at the same point, is a massive credit to him. And his development as well. He's grown leaps and bounds even since when he was at the Wanderers. Just really just been fantastic to watch. Like I said earlier, he's my favourite player in the league to watch right now.
I am full on the bandwagon of get Marcus Eunice to the World Cup. I really am. I think he's ahead of Daniel Arzani, both in clubland. Daniel actually had a decent performance in midweek, but failed to back it up in this game. He's ahead of him for sure. I think he's been performing pretty much in every game, both in the Champions League and in the A-League. On form, I think you look at the last few months, definitely ahead of Nishan Veluple, who got picked in the last squad as well. So I'm all in. I've been calling for it for a month or so as well. I think he should be on the plane.
I like what Joe says as well about, he's a player who can just make those moments. And I feel like that is such a great quality to have in a player that you can just pick. Like you can, I can already see it. You know, like it's 0-0. The Socceroos need a goal to get out of the group or something, and it's like, who do we turn to? And it's, there you go. There's your option right there, Eunice. He comes on. He's got that ability to just change a game completely with a couple of touches of the ball. That's such a rare commodity to have in a footballer. But the fact he does it so consistently as well makes it even better. It's not a, once every 10 games. It's a basically every game at this point. He gets on the ball and does something with it and creates a chance or scores a goal or gets the assist. And it's, that's such an intangible to have as a football player. It's such a, it's such a joy to watch. I agree. I think he's definitely up there as one of the best to watch in the league in terms of his raw talent. The excitement that he brings to the pitch is great. So yeah, honestly, I have him above Arzani as well, for Socceroos contention. Like, I get Arzani has kind of the goodwill with Popovic, and he's been in and around the Socceroos squads a lot recently. But I just think in terms of pure talent and the form that he's in, it makes a lot of sense to have somebody like Eunice as an option if you need him, because he can just provide that spark if you're lacking.
I'd be so surprised if he didn't at least make that extended squad. I'm assuming there'll be a few more than the 26 taken initially to some kind of pre-tournament camp, play a few friendlies before the last 26 is named. And hopefully then he'll get his opportunity in training, as we know Popper likes to see before he gets people involved. In the first team, I think Melbourne City as a club really just starting to annoy people, Joe, how they just keep having sometimes mediocre. To be fair, they've been at the top a fair bit of the time, but they have seasons like this where they just look like they're not going to get there, and they just pull it out of the bag late on and they get into the final series.
Absolutely. And we fell victim to it a couple of years ago when they pipped us to the post in terms of making finals. The scary thing is they do have the best squad on paper, I would say. And the fact that now it's all starting to click, I think every single team in the final series should be scared of them, because they have just so much individual quality. And I think at any moment, a single player on the pitch could come up with a goal or a moment. We saw Bates score again today. He's someone who we've seen is capable of making runs from anywhere on the pitch and getting close to scoring, if not finding the back of the net. They're cheeky. They are. They get on my nerves a lot as a Wanderers fan, just with the amount of times that they've either pumped us 7-1, beaten us to finals, given our players opportunities. They're an annoying club for me personally, but they're very good at what they do, and they're coming home with a wet tail.
Yeah, so after the game that we'll segue into here, MacArthur losing over in Perth late on Sunday evening, it now means that City have a 4-point gap, sitting in 6th place. So it's looking pretty good. That's 9 goal difference advantages there, so effectively 5 points. It feels like we have our top 6 wrapped up. And so Perth, by the time they did get to their game, Jacob, they were mathematically eliminated as well. Didn't stop them from having a hell of a time in front of what I must say, like the Perth Glory crowd, considering all the issues we have around the league. They just continue to show up for this team, which is really, really cool. The shed gets about. You got the younger kind of active support in front of them as well. Really good game. These late Perth games, obviously over on the east side of Australia, we get them at kind of like 9, 10 o'clock, depending on if we're doing daylight savings or not. But they always seem to go pretty well. I want to give a quick little shout out to our friend of the pod, Lachie Flanagan, as well, who made his A-League men's commentary debut. One for the Lockies. Good on you, mate. And it was a cracking game of football. Nick Pennington pretty much opened them up, Jacob. It was funny to see the comparison between him blasting the ball into Rosie when he realised VAR had overturned their penalty just before the halftime break, and then going on to score a goal minutes after the halftime break was quite funny. But it set Perth Glory on a good track to win this game.
Yeah, and I think in a little way it's vindication for the way that the Glory have played the last few weeks. I think they've been incredibly unlucky with some of the results that they've had. They probably, they've had 2 draws before this. Both probably could have been wins. The Mariners one in particular, like they hit the post, they hit the crossbar about 3 times. Like, it's just those fine margins weren't falling for them, and they didn't get that result. And had they done that, I don't know, maybe their season's looking a little bit different, right? But it just, it feels like vindication for the fact that they've not been playing necessarily as bad as their results have perhaps shown. That they've had some bad periods for sure this season, but I think recently especially they've kind of come come good again, which is nice to see, because it kind of shows that, this whole Griffiths thing, it's not a flash in the pan, right? He can get this team playing really, really good football, and they can just take teams out of games, which is exactly what they did here, right? MacArthur flying coming into this one, 2 in a row. We're talking about them and City are going to be the ones that are going to fight for this, final top 6 spot, and it's going to be between those two in the run-in and things like that. And, they've got Perth. Oh, that's a great result for them. And then Perth come out and absolutely just, wipe the floor with them. So it's testament to how well Perth have been able to continue to persevere. And I feel like that's always kind of been the case with Perth. And that's why it's a little bit frustrating to see where they're at, because it feels like over the years, they're kind of consistently in these positions, kind of 8th through 10th. And it's like, if only, they just had 1 or 2 extra things go their way here and there. And, then we're having a different story. I remember a couple of seasons ago, Lachie, when we basically jinxed them. We said, they're on this run, they're going to make finals. And then they ended up losing all of their last 4 games or whatever. And they didn't make it. It's like, they're always kind of there or thereabouts. And so I think that just kind of adds a little bit of frustration to it. But there's a lot of good to see in this Glory team. The way that they're playing their football, it just feels a lot better than anything they did under Zrilic. It's much more fluid. It's more confident and self-assured in their attacking phases of play as well. They're getting on the ball in dangerous areas. They're creating chances. So it's been really fun to watch them, and it's good to see them actually get a result. Sure, it doesn't mean anything for their season now. They're out of finals. I don't know, maybe they've just upset somebody from not getting finals though, so at least you kind of can take playing the villain a little bit there. But it's also great to get that result, considering they have played good football recently and not gotten the result. So, actually getting it is a good thing.
I don't think, Joe, you can underestimate as well the impact of just a little bit of momentum for Perth Glory going into an off-season. Like, only 2 seasons ago, under Alan Stajic, did they go winless in their final 10 games of the season, the final 3 of which included an 8-0 loss to Melbourne City and a 7-1 loss to Sydney FC. Like, how are you supposed to go into an off-season with any sort of optimism as a fan when that's how you end your regular league phase? At least they're getting some results and they can take that forward.
Absolutely. And you touched on it when we first started on this game, just how good those scenes were when they were scoring those goals. Like, it's moments like that is going to get people coming back. At the end of the day, you can finish wherever you want on the table, really. If you're outside of finals, you're outside of finals. But moments like that are what get people coming back. And we saw another great one as well with the Mariners, with Jesse Mantell scoring that goal as well, running to his mates in the crowds. They're the moments in this league that really matter for teams like the Mariners, like Perth, like the Wanderers, but we haven't had any of those, unfortunately. But yeah, look, honestly, they'll take this with them. They're pretty much cementing us now for the wooden spoon as well, so they're playing a villain to my club, at least. But yeah, look, it's good to see it as well. And another thing that was mentioned on the broadcast was the fact that they now have the record for the most top flight games of any club in Australia. So they've overtaken South Melbourne to get that record, which is kind of crazy to think about, because you think of the NSL and it feels like it ran for such a long period of time compared to what the A-League's been going for. Obviously, Perth Glory spent a bit of time in the NSL as well, but yeah, it's pretty cool to see them overtake South Melbourne and pick up that record.
Yeah, very cool moment. Another one of those kind of moments you mentioned in terms of the celebrations as well. After Pennington scored his goal, you saw all the players run over to the bench. That was a tribute to the massage therapist for the team, whose father had unfortunately passed away in recent times. So nice moment there. You talked about Jesse Mantell, or as he was dubbed in our group chat as this game was going on, the mini Nisbet, which is really saying something. The second coming of the smaller version of Josh Nisbet. This was a game that, the Mariners really needed to win. They didn't quite get it done, but that was definitely the fun moment. And I just love that. Okay, we're playing modern football. VAR sometimes messes around with celebrations. Screw you. I'm just going for it anyway, Jacob. 100% full send. As soon as he realizes that's what's going to happen from the review, he's off. He's celebrating straight away.
It's great. Yeah, everyone's always like, oh, you can't have celebrations now with VAR. I think we've just proven the opposite there. You 100% can. You just got to have the motivation to do it. And I mean, what better motivation than, it's a great, very well taken goal as well, is the other thing. Like, that was a solid hit. awesome scenes to see, and I feel like we take them for granted, maybe not in the A-League, but I feel like we get these a lot, and it's just so awesome to see that we keep getting them too. They're not like flash in the pans. It's consistently these players come in, and you can see how passionate they are about this sport, about the clubs that they play for, about the situations they're in. And I mean, Joe, just your shirt reminds me of, Pantazopoulos, right? It's that kind of a player where it's, you can feel it when you watch him play, particularly in the derby for Pantazopoulos. You can feel what it means to him when he's playing. We can't say that for granted here. Like, that is such a key thing to, like you said, Joe, bringing fans back, and actually getting people invested in the team that, is local to them and that they support, and, getting them invested in the game and in the players and things like that. It's so awesome. And yeah, the fact that VAR can't stop that, it brings a tear to your eye, right? Like, it's so beautiful. Such a great moment that it's 100% it's going in like the end of season highlight reels, guaranteed. Paramount use it in their promotional stuff. Like, it's one of those things that's just so awesome to see.
100%. Brisbane Roar, in terms of their season, it wouldn't have actually mattered if they won this game. They still would have been eliminated by virtue of Melbourne City's win. So their season is over. Central Coast Mariners, as I've said before earlier on the show, 6 points plus goal difference behind City. So they really needed to win this one, Joe. It's a shame because there have been patches that there's so much going on behind the scenes at the club. Losing Mark Jackson on the eve of the season. Obviously the ownership situation, it looks like QPR, something in that regard is happening, but obviously that kind of thing, those effects take place over a long term, not the short term period. So their season looks like it's ending here, and it had moments, didn't it? Like they snuck up into the top six. The Mariners, like the little club that could, they almost looked like they were doing it again, but unfortunately just fell short. Yeah,
unfortunately. It was shaping up to be one of those typical Mariners runs that they've been known for in recent years, but yeah, no, just a mountain too high come the end. I mean, they could still somehow squeeze a way in, but yeah, look, the odds are not in their favour on this one.
And Andrew Redmayne's 300th game as well. We mentioned it last week, it's a very cool game to someone to play that many games in their A-League career. Jordan Lawton manages to jump a little higher, though. Maybe the afro is the difference. I don't know. Maybe that makes up for the goalkeeper being able to use their arms, Jacob. I don't know.
It was strange to watch. It's like, you see the ball coming down and you think, oh yeah, Redders has got that. That's no problem. But it's kind of almost like the timing was just slightly off on his leap. And yeah, Lawton managed to get up ahead of him. It's kind of a rare mistake from Redmayne this season. We were literally talking last week on the podcast about how great he's been for the Mariners and how he's been easily one of the best keepers in the league. And then he goes and makes a mistake, and it's, kind of, it sullies the whole thing. And obviously the occasion of it being his 300th game as well, he would have wanted to go out, with the win. But I mean, it happens, right? Keepers make mistakes, move on. I don't think it was anything. It's not like it was a complete head loss and anything silly. It was just, slightly mistimed jump or, whatever. And you move on. Redders is a good goalkeeper. Like I said, the Mariners will be happy to keep him around probably for another couple of years if they can, and just have that presence at the club because he's been so good for them this season. So.
All right, there you go. There is your A-League debrief for round 24. Just 2 to go. We're really getting down to the nitty-gritty now, and that will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Joe K Football on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, on all your platforms that you love. We appreciate you coming on, mate, and appreciate your insight.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, boys. Hopefully next time will be under better circumstances for me.
100%. Jacob Stevens, thank you.
Cheers, Lachie.
Thank you all very much for listening at home. We appreciate your company. As always, we'll see you a little bit later in the week to preview round 25 in the A-League competition. See you next time. Goodbye.